first, John. So there's a lot of talk about AI in the recent months, especially since ChatGPT launched last year. What would you say, or how would you define what AI is?
Um, Thank you very much, right there. AI is basically the ability for man-made intelligence to do things quicker, faster, and in ways that you can't compute. So if you think about it from the perspective that if I can see one, a man-made intelligence can probably see one multiples of one at the same time. And that's really the only difference when you think about what is AI is the ability for a man-made intelligence that we build to do things faster at a sequence that we can't process in real time.
So then would you say that this man-made intelligence tool or platform has has evolved over time to what AI is right now?
I mean, AI has been around for years.
Okay.
It didn't just start today.
Okay.
I mean, it's been around since the 18th century. It's evolved in the late 50s, early 60s to more an intelligent form of decision processing. Now we have ChatGPT and all these things that you're mentioning, but there's been lots of AI tools. But the thing is, it's now at the forefront of everything that we do. Why? Because we live in a very connected world.
So you would say perhaps internet connectivity and things like that have accelerated the evolution of AI?
Yes.
Okay.
I was watching something by David Bowie the other day, and there's also George Orwell wrote this book about 1984, the way the world would change. And there was this interview that David Bowie got when he talked about this thing called this internet, the way that it will change the world in ways that you can't understand. Well, guess what? 20 something odd years later, we're grappling with the way this connected world is changing.
Yeah. For some of us, we didn't grow up in the age of the internet, and we watched maybe the Jetsons and thought, my God, I mean, cars that fly, that are self-driving, or, I think the Jetsons for me reminds me of how, how much we've progressed since then. But for those, who've been born digital natives, what really is different, or how would you say they need to embrace AI differently?
I mean, for those of us who were born before the internet, or for those of us who were born
The
after?
after.
I
The
mean,
digital natives who were born with a
this,
phone in their hand.
these ones have no concept of anything that you're talking about.
Okay.
Their concept and objective reality is about now, fast, quick, everything has to happen. So they don't live in the same world that you live in. If you think about the theory of multiple universes, they live in a whole different multi-layer of a universe where they see the world differently. They transact with the world differently, and for them, AI is a companion. It's not a problem. It's a companion. It's what they need to do the things they're going to do at the speed in which they want to do those things. So their philosophy of how AI should work, or what, and even if you look at the people who are driving a lot of the AI, I mean, Sam Altman, how old is he?
Yeah. How old is he? I don't know.
He's in his 30s.
Okay, wow.
Well, I think less.
Wow.
So, I mean, there's these new kids who are driving another AI proposition in France. I think they're like in their late 20s again. So, they are charting new versions of reality. And for them, remember, this is reality. So it's a reality, it's real for them. For you, it's like, whoa, this thing is happening, and for them, this is the reality that that they're currently living in, and that they want to live in, and this is just enhancing that reality.
Yeah. And speaking of that, this evolution of AI, what does that look like on the African continent? I can imagine, AI is borderless. And so that means, we should actually be on the same page as the rest of the world, right? Is that the case? Why are you laughing?
Sorry. Good question for the African continent. Our kids are no different.
Okay.
They are smart, they are intelligent, they can also build amazing things. But we have some critical problems. First of all, we don't have the infrastructure to compete at this level.
What sort of infrastructure are you referring to?
Infrastructure, I talk about education. That is the basic fundamental.
So a capability issue?
Yes, the talent issue. The basic fundamental infrastructure is talent. We don't have, how many AI engineers you have in Kenya? Like real proper AI engineers.
But it's such a new field. I mean, which university teaches AI?
Again, so back to that fundamental problem. In France, they've been teaching AI from the 90s.
Gotcha.
In the US, they've been teaching AI from the 90s.
You see, in Africa, the African parent wants either you become a doctor, engineer, or lawyer. So this is new.
I don't think it's the African parent. I just think it's...
Yeah, that's what I'm just saying.
Yes, it's the way that we as a continent, don't understand the consistent transitional nature of technology.
Okay.
And how that has to be embedded in our education system, how the reforms consistently has to be part of the education system, so that, my daughter was learning stuff around AI from when she was 7 years old.
Yeah. Not in Africa.
No, she's 16 now. So imagine her thought process.
Yeah. So our university or our education systems are not evolving fast enough to catch up with the new reality.
We need massive reform in our education system. We also then need to do intentional things to actually say, okay, where do we start? Because this battle for what will happen is already happening. And countries like India, Indonesia are reforming even their developers. They're beginning to provide, capacity. So there's something that I talked about when I was in Paris at the World AI Conference, which was qualitative human capital rather than quantitative human capital. So we count a lot on quantitative human capital. And the value of quantitative human capital is not a lot. Whereas qualitative human capital means that you can actually calculate the value of the capital of each human based on the new technologies that have been built. And that qualitative value will, when you draw the line, you will see how it will change your society.
But one would also argue, if you just go back to the education system, that, in my early years in university in the 90s, I'm scared to say that. I started studying computer science.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I dropped it as my major is because I realized by the time I was going to graduate, the coding I was learning, which was early coding, I can't remember the language, maybe C plus or something. C++, those ones, which, and I realized, speaking to my professors, that by the time I was going to be graduating, they would be obsolete. So it goes back to the, evolution of our educational system. Is this really sustainable? Because technology and the evolution is so fast, it's so rapid. What other ways can we ensure that we're upskilling or building capability of our young talent in Africa, considering that in Africa we have over 60% of the population is under the age of 30. That does not exist in any other continent around the world. Yeah.
That is quantitative.
Okay.
But it's not qualitative.
Okay, so explain again quantitative versus qualitative human capital.
Quantitative human capital. We have a lot of people, young, who are ready for the workforce.
And that's a good thing, right?
It's a good thing.
Okay.
So that's what we layer on. Okay. Oh, there's a lot of young people. Great. But what is the quality of each of those young people? When you draw a graph of each young person from Kenya to Chad, to Mali, to Niger, to Malawi, and you draw a line and you see what is the qualitative value. When you take a median average, what is the qualitative value of our human capital? Because that is what will change your GDP.
Okay.
So in India, they've invested in qualitative human capital for the past 20 years. So what do you see? You see a lot of Indians who run major tech companies.
Right.
And you see those Indians now bringing back into their society. Now India is going to build probably the largest workforce of data scientists, data engineers, or AI engineers, because they see where the future is going. So qualitative human capital is what we must focus our energy on, that how do we take this quantity and make it quality?
Absolutely.
And that's where, when you look at AI lives in the realm of qualitative human capital, because if you're quantitative, you're consumers.
Yeah.
That's all you'll ever be.
Yeah.
They'll consume. You'll consume. You'll consume. You would not produce. And if you don't produce, you have no power.
Yeah. That's a very strong statement. If you do not produce, you have no power. So if I'm a marketer today, I finished my university, I've been working for 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, whatever. What do I need to do today to be able to, be that producer, to be able to build brands that are actually producing for consumers?
I think media marketing is one of those first industry that will feel the impact of AI.
Yeah. We're already feeling it.
I think so. I think first thing, every young marketer who's coming out of university, you need to equip yourself with some basic computer skills. And when we say digital skilling, you need to equip yourself with some basic life skills. Like, it's like you're swimming in this ocean, this consistent ocean that is changing. So the life skills, number one life skills, go to a basic course. I'm not saying be a developer or no. Understand what is AI, what is data, how is data transforming the world, and how can I use this, and what are the tools then that I need to use behind the scenes, because your job will change. Your job is no longer the way it was 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
They're 19-year-old kids sitting in their bedroom who can do that job just using a machine intelligence. Yeah. So what you have over them is your creative ability, because still AI can't.
And commercial acumen as
exactly.
well. Yeah.
But your creativity is the first thing that differentiates you. So if you don't embed yourself in the knowledge that your single source of truth is it's knowledge.
You're right.
And you have to keep seeking that knowledge, because the world you live in, unfortunately, it changes every single year.
Yeah, that's so important, and I'm so glad you said it. That whole continuous learning is so key for marketers today, right? To stay up to date. So there's this whole thing of AI is going to take away jobs from marketers.
Yes.
What's your point of view on that?
Yes. Will it take away some jobs? Yes, temporarily, because of the frenzy, and your consumers will use it. People are like sheep. If something happens, everybody says, now I can write my press release with ChatGPT. I don't need that company anymore. Now I can do that with Chat. So, and there's all new things coming out. So you will face it, but this is where you reforming your industry. You still have a massive role. So the dynamic change is in that knowledge, the acquisition of knowledge, to say we're still extremely relevant because we're the ones who actually do this work. Yes, we can leverage a bit of AI to do it faster, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it will take away. So some people who are redundant in knowledge will be redundant, and the ones who embrace knowledge and who begin to figure out, how do I use this technology to make my work better? How do I use it to chart uncharted regions of what I can do? How do I use AI to do new forms of sentiment analysis in marketing, for example? How do I use it to do new forms of consumer engagement? How do I build new conversational models that allows me to talk to my small customers? How do I personalize? It's still a human that will drive those infrastructure values. So with that, if you change the way you think, so the new ones who are coming in are the ones who will take your job, not necessarily the
That's true. Speaking of generative AI, I agree with you. From a productivity point of view, from strategic thinking point of view, it can really enhance what we're already doing. What about from a organizational culture point of view? And think about we're sitting in Africa, how the different kinds of cultures that exist in the organizations. You work a lot with medium-sized enterprises, large corporates, multinationals. What would that do for the culture?
I think first it'll make things a bit cheaper initially.
Okay.
Because
efficiencies,
price points are a lot of what, because now you don't need 50 people to do the same thing. So if you're doing the same thing for me, you can charge me less because your cost of ops has reduced dramatically.
Absolutely.
So that means you can offer me a better pricing, you can offer me a much more personalized service. But also in organizations, unfortunately, you will get rid of people who like to please you.
Say that louder.
I mean, you'll get rid of people who like to please you, people who just, there's a lot of big organizations who carry people so you can be seen to carry this massive amount of people. But half of them are quite entirely useless to, in terms of your productivity, because only 20% of the people ever really produce for you.
80% of the work.
Yes.
Yeah.
What if you could compensate those 20% much better? And the remaining 80%, you retrain them. Or, again, there's a cycle where those 80%, another 20% can go into. So it doesn't, the circle of life doesn't necessarily change. It's just how we look at it and how we use this transformation for our own personal change. So a lot of organizations will change, big companies, you can see it already happening. In this bearish market where big corps are letting people go left, right, and center. Did you need all those people to do all that stuff at Twitter? Maybe not. Did you need 7 people to do one person's job? Maybe not. Maybe you need another type of person. But I also think it gives a lot of people a bit of a kick to go learn something and become responsible for your life and stop blaming, things, because these things will keep happening.
Yeah. And I like that thing of, again, back to continuous learning. Again, back in my uni days, actually high school, I thought I wanted to become a lawyer. And another reason why I didn't become a lawyer is because I felt, my God, I would always have to be reading, cases from the past and all that. And that reading thing, when you're in high school, you're like, I'm done. But in our roles today, to stay up to date and relevant, it's continuously soaking in that knowledge. And I think the advantage we have is the accessibility of that content. What do you do to stay up to date, with what's new, emerging, evolving? How do you explore trends?
I think you have to look at industry-specific knowledge and how that applies to technology. So the internet is great. It's provided you with a place to do all your research. You don't even have to pay for it. You just need to pay with your time. And do most people invest the time? They don't. Then they say, oh, well, there's nothing like, oh, well, I couldn't. You can. Do you invest the time to do the research required? Okay, what are the new things happening in marketing? What are the new things happening with AI in marketing? How do we collect data right now as a marketing organization? How do we use that data for intelligence? How do we create more personalized value for our customers? Because at the end of the day, it's down to your customers. How do we build models that allow us to understand people better?
Yeah.
How do I know when John wakes up, that's when I should send him an advert, because maybe John doesn't see any advert throughout the whole day because he's so busy. I only have an hour.
Right.
But just by the way it currently is, you wouldn't know that John has an hour.
Right.
But if you harness data coming from John using his device to you, you could see that there is a pattern. John is always online for 1 hour.
Yeah.
That's when he hits my platform.
Yeah.
So that is intelligence. Shall I take that intelligence and then apply it to with my creativity to say, this is the only time that I would try to talk to John?
Absolutely. Okay, so you recently wrote an article in the Star newspaper where you passionately stated that Africa must embrace and adopt AI as a key, if not the most important form of technology, to make sure we're truly part of the 4th industrial revolution. What does that look like for Africa? Why are you so passionate about this?
I'm passionate about the young people in this continent. What are we going to leave them if we don't ask ourselves intentionally the question to create societies where they can thrive and societies where they can compete at a global level?
Right.
And the standards mustn't be an African standard. It must be how do we compete on a global standard? See, the idea that, we should treat ourselves differently just because we're Africans, our standards should be less objective from a global perspective. I disagree, and that's also part of the fallacy and the problems that is also existing within our society. So we have these standards, oh, just because we're Africans, we're not expected. Well, we are expected to be at a global standard. So if we ask that of ourselves, so with that, you ask yourself, well, where is the instant opportunity? I was talking to a friend of mine, we talked about digital skilling for Africa. And one of the things I said, look, for me, I think, yes, every African should have some kind of digital skill. But if we're a bit selfish and we look at it and say, okay, in any given country, where is the jobs right now? The jobs are in data scientists. The jobs are in AI. The jobs are in data engineering. The jobs are in cybersecurity. The jobs are in blockchain technology. So maybe if I train a lot of young people in those jobs now, they can sit here in Kenya, they can sit in Nigeria, they can sit anywhere, and actually conduit that FDI for me. And I build an export market, but I generate wealth. And locally, using that wealth, those same young people sitting there will start building new forms of organizations. So if we, and that is where that $13 trillion market, which is growing every year. So where do we participate in that? So again, back to what I said in the beginning, if you don't have the fundamental element, which is the talent, the skills, the expertise, there's nothing you can do.
Gotcha. There, and not to, negate what's happening on the continent. Of course, there are a lot of young entrepreneurs, developers, who are doing amazing things, but just not, the scale is not there. And the exposure, and by scale I mean outside of the continent, is not there. I mean, Nigeria has so many, I don't want to call them startups, but basically opportunities, or where they're leveraging data and technology to provide solutions to businesses, but it stays just there in Nigeria or maybe Kenya or South Africa or wherever, and not scaling outside of the continent. Yet we, for many, many years, as we know, have been the recipients of those same sort of platforms, technology solutions from outside. What needs to shift?
Mental psychology.
Tell me more about that.
I think I always refer to a story when I was called the HTML India. Remember back in the days when you wanted to build a website? What did you do? You found some Indian developer.
Yeah.
You sent him a message. You even paid him up front. But you never saw him, did you?
No.
He exported his skills and his technology to you, and he built it. So imagine that we here, if we don't change the psychology that we can build products for a global market, that our skills are transferable at a global scale, and some little by little we're seeing that happen, that is all that needs to shift. Because again, we're being told that, only build products for your market, you have specific problems. So the people who are also, writing the stories for us are making sure that, we consistently, are the breakfast on the table. Because the moment we realize that we actually do have a seat, we're not the breakfast.
So who needs to own this change, this mind? Is it government? Is it private sector?
Government is not enough. Government will only do what it can. Private sector is the driver for lasting change. A unified private sector that is actively thriving with an intentional view to change an ecosystem.
Right.
And to say, we can, and how we also raise our young people. Give you an example. We have, a lot of countries in Africa, a lot of the startups or organizations, when you talk to them, they talk about their own country.
Right.
But the opportunity is Africa.
You need to go cross-border, yeah.
When you talk to an international company coming, they say, we're going to Africa.
Yeah.
But when you talk to us, I'm in Kenya, I'm in Rwanda. Because again, mentally, we haven't shifted to the fact that we are a borderless ecosystem.
Correct.
And my market opportunity is actually the 1.3 billion people, or the next country next door to me. So which is when you then say the biggest shift for Africa in the short term for this intra-Africa trade is actually technology, not even goods. Is because it's easy to move technology from here to Zambia.
Yeah.
it's hard to move tomatoes
Yeah.
from here to Uganda.
Yeah. You know, and let's just go back to the role of government. In a recent interview, in the lead up to the AI for Leaders conference that was recently held here in Nairobi, you spoke about the importance of government and leaders in industry actually coming to the table on how they would actively contribute to Africa's contribution to this $13 trillion industry. Your organization recently signed an MOU with Nairobi County. So are these kind of partnerships what you're talking about, and what else needs to be done?
How do we help the county drive the adoption and also the capacity to build more type of what I call future work opportunities? So what if Nairobi City was known as the home for data sciences globally, and anybody who was looking for a data science would think, let's go to Nairobi.
Right.
Like you build an identity as a city, as a country, of what it is.
Like what Silicon Valley
exactly. This
was
is what
built
I'm really
to be.
good at.
Right.
We haven't chosen that identity yet. We want to be everything. Choose each country. Imagine choosing a specific identity.
Right.
And driving deep into that identity.
Yeah.
And then using that to then create a trickle-down effect. So, and I think governments are a critical part of it. And, less we talk about, I know policies are important. And even in Europe, European government officials are still trying to grapple with what really is this AI and what is the monster that is going. So how do you regulate when you don't understand yet? Right? Maybe we should focus on how do we build value first. So I call it AI for social and commercial good.
Okay.
Both have to live together, and then as a part of public service.
Yeah.
So if we also look at the commercial good part, then we will say, okay, what do we need to attract and harness the commercial value of this change in industry, of this dynamic monster that is just, rolling out in front of us.
Yeah.
Because the social part is great.
Yeah.
And it will be part of the framework of how the commercial value helps countries. But if we focus too much on the social, you lose out.
So you have to have a balance,
commercial value of providing jobs here, building R&D opportunities, building, our own Wakanda.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're spot on, because if there has to be a value creation model, efficiencies realized, effectiveness, all that kind of stuff. What is it doing to grow the economies? But you mentioned something that's interesting. You said, how do you regulate when you don't even understand the technology? There's a lot of ambiguity still around all these different technologies, not just AI, IoT, all the others. You can name them. So how even as local governments in Africa able to make sure that we're regulating properly and not stifling, advancement or creativity?
I mean, just bring it back home to your organization, for example, the Marketing Association, right?
Marketing Society of Kenya.
Marketing Society of Kenya.
Yeah.
Imagine if you intentionally provided knowledge for a lot of people in your industry around these smart technologies, NFTs, AI, how they use it, and you use that knowledge to give them real practical experiences. And when they go back to their organizations and where they're making decisions, they're able to make better, more informed decisions.
Yeah.
So, but unfortunately, most of them lack knowledge.
Right.
And knowledge is the second part of knowledge is not just what you read on the internet. It's also how you embed that knowledge into a framework of that particular industry.
Okay.
And you feed those people, again, intentionality, that piece of knowledge. And they take that piece of knowledge. So imagine their organizations is like a little government. They can go back into their organization. So that is also where you see the advancement from a marketing perspective, even in Africa.
Interesting perspective.
So now when you now flip that into government,
yeah,
you appoint someone as a commissioner, director, whatever. Maybe the guy came as a teacher and you assume that he should know what to do. And and he makes his decisions based on his thought process, or based on people who are advising him. And the rest of us sit out there and say, well, why he's not doing the right thing? But we assume too much. just because someone is appointed that they should know what to do. So providing knowledge, again, capacitating government officials with the basic knowledge so they understand each piece of this puzzle so that in their decision-making processes, they can see the value on every side.
Absolutely. Just switching gears a bit, I know we've talked a lot about the hot topic AI, but there's also been quite a lot of buzz around NFTs and their potential to help brands grow and grow, build their communities. First of all, what is an NFT? Do you have an example of a use case of an NFT that has, helped marketers or a brand build a community?
NFTs are non-fungible tokens. They're sort of like a stored value of information that you can use for loyalty, that you can use for rewards, that you can use to generate engagement, that someone can hold back and use it to buy something out of you as an asset. So when you think about it, and I truly believe NFTs are very interesting, especially in consumer marketing, as a form of consumer engagement. And because consumer marketing is really a lot about loyalty as well. Yeah. You want to build stickability, loyalty, and you want to reward your customers. You want to be able to understand them better. And launching this type of NFTs that allows you to collect this back and forth information while you're also giving this value back to your customer, who could be a B2C or a B2B type customer. But let's take the B2C, for example. All these new Gen Zs, they collect NFTs. And that NFT the stored value in it could be a reward. The stored value in it could be the opportunity to, access other types of services within your network. The stored value in it could also be you engaging and extracting data back from them. And that the stored value could also be transferable to the next person. And maybe that, think about a baseball card from the 50s, as it grows, what happens? That baseball card becomes what? More expensive.
So let's talk about that. How is that value derived, Because you see NFTs for millions of dollars or whatever. And I'm like, what?
Okay, there's a lot of craziness on that side,
okay.
which it's sometimes hard to explain because people create market making, and if you know the financial market, there's also the same thing happens with this. People market make, and they say,
what do you mean they market make?
So think about Monet, for example, the Monet painting. There was only one guy who made, and at the time when he was making the painting, there was all these other things around him as Monet making the painting. So now we know that the value of this Monet painting is worth X. Okay, I can't have it.
Yeah.
So maybe somebody else can decide, well, I'm going to split this value of the Monet painting into so many fragmented pieces, and you can now have a tiny little bit value, and you can participate in the world of Monet without necessarily having to say I own the whole thing. So people create these things, and some of it is just perceived value as well. It is
perceived value, isn't it?
It's not really backed by any real asset, but which is where it becomes more interesting in what I call the Web 2 world,
okay,
which is more your world, Web 2 and Web 3, because you have real value. It's an organization that has points that point is real value. That point is almost money.
You mean like a loyalty point?
Yes.
Yeah, it
is. And as a customer, I can use it.
Yeah.
Now imagine building an NFT around that real value. And saying, okay, with this NFT, apart from just this point, there's so many other things you can do that will package inside this NFT. And we use it as a form of engagement with you all the time.
Okay.
And when you go to any of our customers, we'll also use it to collect back information. And all of a sudden, that NFT value just keeps rising. So instead of the point, people actually even buy the NFT off you.
Right.
And they say, oh, let me buy the NFT because I can use it to trade in your ecosystem.
Then that makes sense. You see, that one I understand. That it makes sense.
So I think a lot of companies, consumer companies, are marketing folks should really explore NFTs in Africa. I think you'd really get a lot of consumer engagement.
Do you see any brand doing it well
Coca-Cola did a couple things. I don't think it was done in Africa. Again, I think we're very we're early and late adopters. We adopt hype, but we're late.
When you say we, who are you referring to?
Africans.
Okay.
We adopt a lot of hype, but we're late practical experts. I mean, EABL, for example, you guys should have launched NFTs. You would have done. It's like the days of augmented reality.
So why do you think a lot of brands in Africa or marketers are not fast followers?
Lack of knowledge.
Is it just knowledge? Because the knowledge is there.
Fundamental. Just because I read it on the internet doesn't mean that I truly understand it.
The practical application of it?
Practical. So if you as an organization would organize a session for your folks to say, okay, let someone walk them through step by step what they can do, then why don't you try? You would see it's a ripple effect. So and I've seen this happen.
I'm pained that you have no example from Africa on NFT adoption.
In a strong marketing, I haven't seen anything that pops out at me.
Okay.
I've seen things in traceability in agriculture.
Okay. But what opportunities are so obvious as such low lying fruit that you would say as a marketer in Africa, pick this up and run with it?
Loyalties.
Okay.
Loyalty programs, consumer engagement programs, reward programs, building asset values that your suppliers can use. And saving yourself money, even tokenizing those assets so you don't have to spend money. Okay. And then people become the ones who spend for you.
Okay.
And those are low-hanging fruits that you can adopt, an NFT model that will cost you less, allow you to engage, collect data that you probably would not have been able to collect, use that data to build more value, and then move that product around within your ecosystem so people want to join you. So I go to a bar, I have my NFT, and I use it to buy a drink. But it's not a reward token.
Some Johnny Walker.
Yeah, it's Johnny Walker. It's not a reward token. It's an NFT because that's just one value inside it.
Okay.
So I can still continue with that NFT. Now I can trade it to someone else. There's enough other value inside even when I trade it. But you're the owner of it. So you're sitting back and you're seeing how this trade is evolving, how people are consistently using your network.
Interesting.
The beauty of that, imagine what you could do.
Yeah. So we've talked about AI, we've talked about NFTs, but there are a lot of other technologies. There's IoT, Internet of Things. I think we're a bit familiar with that. Blockchain, crowdfunding. And these things, they used to feel like they're just words of the future, but the future is here. Could you just share what your understanding is of some of these technologies and maybe share which one excites you the most?
Blockchain, obviously, it's a very exciting form of technology I believe, especially in Africa, has a massive use case opportunity. That's one of the most exciting technologies for me, blockchain. I think a lot of businesses, once they start understanding the real value of blockchain, think about, again, your organization, EABL, for example. Imagine you had a smart contract with all your suppliers that says when something happens, this triggers automatically your payment. This triggers this service. And in that smart contract, this is the value of everything that I do. And this is the quality. It doesn't change. And now I can track that information without too much human intervention. Something as simple as that will change. Imagine your traceability. You can trace exactly where organic foods come from now because of the blockchain, because all that. So I'm really excited about that. I think from a Web 2 perspective, you can even, organizations can even tokenize their assets and say, okay, you know what, we want to raise money, but we don't necessarily want to go borrow money. We have all these assets and we have all these people who trust us. We will create a tokenized asset where people will buy into our tokenized value. And as our business grows, we will pay them back. And I don't have to go and have borrowed money from someone else because I've built so much value into my business. So those are some of the things that the blockchain ecosystem, and when you truly understand the power, forget cryptocurrencies now, when you truly understand the power of it as a business, what it can do for you. AI, obviously, we've talked about it. And NFTs, I mean, I think for marketing specifically, I would love to see more organizations here use NFTs. I would love to see a lot of events use NFTs. I'd love to see programs use NFTs. You know, support programs that you're doing for people. NFTs are great for these opportunities. And those are the three, I mean, for me right now, that kind of every day always jumps at me.
Okay. And what is your organization doing around, you know, number one, upskilling or capability building, and also influencing organizations to adopt these kind of technologies?
So we built 2 centers of excellence. The AI Center of Excellence, where we ran the event in last year, just this April, the AI for Leaders Summit, where we brought over 179 leaders across Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda who came here, and South Africa as well, and we brought some of the global experts to provide, again, that first level of information. We train a lot of data scientists, also AI engineers, and we also support companies by helping them develop solutions that could actually help them scale. But it's actually one of the cool things we do is we help organizations work through the data transformation process first understanding your data before you do anything. And then we also have the Africa Blockchain Center as well. Again, same model. We train a lot of blockchain developers. We support organizations to build their NFT projects, and we also trying to get a lot of global organizations to invest in young Africans. So those are some of the things that we're doing on our little side to help the ecosystem.
You sound very busy, and you have a lot of work ahead of you.
Well, I was coming on a plane, and somebody asked me a question, and it said, we will all die, irrespective. So we're all going to the same end. But how we live is what makes us different. So my purpose in life is how I live, because the end is the same. So work becomes irrelevant. It's all about my purpose.
Absolutely. Well said, well said. Our producer has one question for you.
Just a really fun, quick-fire question. We know with anything rising, there's always conspiracy theories. So what's the funniest misconception about AI you've encountered?
That it'll help you find a wife?
Is that a conspiracy theory or is it fact?
Fact.
Actually, I saw, I think also Snapchat has AI, and you can name it whatever you want. So somebody has named it Babe, someone has named it, and I think somebody opened up, was vulnerable, and AI was like, nah, I don't do that kind of thing. Yeah.
And you're living in an illusion. Go find your own wife.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, John, for being our guest on the iMarket podcast. It's really been an interesting conversation. I've learned a few things here, and I know our audience will pick up several things that they can learn and implement and execute. I'm really excited about the future for Africa, and I'm glad that you're in this space. Thank you, John.
Thanks very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay. All right.